Welcome back to the Have Not Room. I'm Ben, and I'm joined here, as always, by Brian, and we are here to talk about Week 2 of Big Brother 23. And a little bit less chaotic than the first week, given that we have an HOH who isn't a complete psycho.
Yeah, I think it'd just be really hard to top how chaotic Frenchie's reign was. But him being a target is also a little chaotic. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we don't want to bury the lead here, obviously, but yeah, it's definitely if Week 1 was like the chaotic rise, quote unquote, of Frenchie, this has been the really cringy and hard to watch fall that we all expected to come.
Yeah, I mean, this is really like what I expect. Like, if I ever got on to Big Brother, probably would be a similar situation here.
Mhm.
Just flame out immediately and look like a big idiot. So, Frenchie, it's tough. Um, I'm probably still gonna make fun of you on here
Oh,
because
for
I'm in
sure.
this seat and not in the Big Brother house. But it's probably not gonna be the greatest thing to come home to after the display that he put on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like, whether or not I would do well on Big Brother, I feel very confident that I at least wouldn't pull the level of stunts that Frenchie has. So I feel pretty okay with the expected amount that we'll probably make fun of him on this podcast. But before we get to that, let's just briefly close out the week one stuff. We last recorded on last Tuesday with Sarah, and we talked about the expected eviction of Travis. We also talked about Derek X's first veto win of the season in week one. Was there anything from the Wednesday night episode other than the veto competition that stood out to you?
No, not really. I mean, it's unfortunate for Travis that he he really didn't do much wrong other than just like being the last bro
Mm-hmm.
available to be ousted. And I think that it's probably good for his teammates that he's gone, just because like now I feel like those three are pretty integrated. I mean, obviously Kyland won HOH, but yeah, no, I mean pretty straightforward week from what we thought it was going to be last week.
Yeah, we got to see the veto comp, which was they had to build this kind of like ramp puzzle thing where they had to set up pieces to make a ball go down and like hit all of these fruits or whatever they were. I thought it was an interesting comp. I think that so far the comps this season have been I'd say above average compared to normal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like fun and different and not like relying on strength or anything like that. So it kind of sets the stage for like a pretty even competition across the board. Derek X obviously very smartly works
Hmm.
from the bottom to the top so that he can just copy everyone's work halfway, which hey, work smarter, not harder. There's
Yep.
no like wrong way to win a comp in Big Brother, so that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a big advocate for if cheating is available, cheating is available in any of these comps. Definitely take advantage of it. There's you don't get any extra points for chivalry or whatever. So yeah, definitely if there's a comp or where for instance you have to memorize numbers and memorize operators to make a math equation, and you expect everyone to go to the numbers first. You could go to the operators first,
Yep.
So a deep
And
cut
then
for
copy out.
just me and Brian there.
Yeah, it's one of the best for the back of the room
Yeah.
jokes, but yeah. So I mean, I think it was smart. I liked it. I like Derek X a lot, so I was happy that he won the veto to stay safe, especially where Frenchie seemingly was going for him.
Hmm.
Although I saw a really funny tweet where Frenchie and him were talking, and Frenchie was like, "Oh, I was never coming for you. I mean, I was, but only for a little bit."
I think he said specifically only for like 3 days.
Yeah, so only for most of the week.
Yeah.
It's whatever.
Yeah. I wasn't coming for you at all. Well, I was, but only for like 3 days.
Mhm.
Yeah, real.
So that's good.
We're killing it here, Frenchie. Um, But yeah, so yeah, as we talked about last week, Derek X won the veto, took down Kyland. Travis was the replacement nominee, and we do see on the Thursday night episode, Travis is the first person evicted from the house by a vote of 11-2. This is one of the big early week 2 storylines we get as the feeds come back on Thursday night into Friday. Is we have 2 rogue votes here cast by Big D and Tiffany. What are your thoughts on these rogue votes?
I mean, I think having 2 rogue votes is a lot more fun than having a 13-0 vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor of throwing rogue votes. If you can play it off well enough, just do it whenever you feel like it could be fun.
Yeah. And what we see on the Sunday night episode that Derek F or Big D did not really have a plan with this, other than just kind of screwing around to entertain himself. Whereas Tiffany was basically loosely strong-armed in doing this by Frenchie, and agreed on the with the caveat that Frenchie would tell literally nobody because she is very aware that Frenchie has a big mouth and is going to be liable to throw her under the bus even accidentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, hey, there's no one I'd rather trust than Frenchie to keep a secret in the Big Brother house. Let's just say that. I
mean, at the very least, as we'll see this during the rest of week 2, Frenchie has basically been outed as, kind of like a borderline pathological liar in a lot of ways. And so I don't even know if he would have revealed that it was Tiffany, how many people would believe him.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah, if it turns in like a he said, she said.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely, it creates some amount of intrigue, and there were people as the feeds came back on being like, who cast these votes? And at a certain point, Big D was like, I cast one of the votes. I just want to get it off my, get it out of the way here because, I don't want people to have to run around and talk about this. And I think a lot of Big D's game decisions can come down to just him getting bored or annoyed or not wanting to have to deal with certain things and just trying to make his life as easy as possible, even if it makes his game bad.
Yeah, you think at that point it's just don't cast a rogue vote then? What the hell? I mean, the big key to casting a rogue vote, if you want to, use it to mix up the game, is to, not immediately out yourself for having done it. Yeah. So it's an interesting strategy to be sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that first of all, you should have any semblance of a plan, really. Because, in Tiffany's case, she was basically doing it to appease Frenchie, who wanted to try to have more heat on Derek X, which didn't work because everyone immediately was like, oh yeah, Derek X, of course, didn't do that. That would be so stupid for him to do. It's clearly somebody trying to frame him. So at least that makes sense. But to make the vote for essentially no reason and then come out afterwards when people are, from your eyes, I guess, unexpectedly trying to figure out who cast the vote and be like, oh, I did the vote, or I did one of the votes, so you don't have to keep doing the little witch hunt here. I cast one of them. Yeah, it definitely seems pointless.
Yeah, it seems like I made a really good winner pick, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the rest of the week for Big D. It's not great.
What's the optimal rogue vote strategy? Because I know in my mind I would be if I'm gonna do it, I would cast it and then I would just not mention it. Mm-hmm. If someone mentioned it to me, I'd be yeah, that's weird, but whatever. But I would want to feign complete disinterest and just let it marinate amongst people,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that happens pretty frequently where somebody does something sketchy in order to make it appear like somebody else is the one being sketchy, and it's always the person who did it that is the most indignant about it, or the most interested in trying to solve the mystery. And I think that people kind of catch on to that. where they're like, oh, I don't think really anybody cares that much. So the fact that you care that much or seeming to is pretty suspicious. So yeah, I think that first of all, just don't cast rogue votes. It almost never works. Most of the time, the person you're trying to frame will just say, hey, I didn't do it. And because the person you're trying to frame is usually in a situation where they have nothing to lose anyways, people will generally believe them, because why would they lie? Why would they do it and then lie about it when they're already in such a bad spot?
Right.
So, yeah, usually it's just going to create a witch hunt and some chaos, and most people are not going to be capable of selling it. And even if you are capable of selling it, you gain very little for like a pretty huge risk in terms of like the risk you're making of your reputation, in my opinion. But, that's not to say it can't work. I mean, technically, I wouldn't say that Mickey's rogue vote in BB21 worked, but it didn't kill his game necessarily in the short term. But it did end up being a factor in him and Holly being excommunicated from Grateful, so yeah. I would say just don't.
Ironically, probably the best thing that happened to him and Holly, so like it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the rogue votes. Most people eventually believed that Big D was indeed one of the votes in terms of the people that he did tell, which were primarily the Slaughterhouse members. But the other people that were either being framed or people were speculating were Brent and Whitney. Mostly because Brent and Whitney are kind of being set up as targets in the near future by people on the outside. So
yeah, kind of house pariahs. If you don't win a comp, they'll probably be on the block next week. Just an easy, follow up to Frenchie.
Yeah.
Going out this week, so we'll see what happens there.
Yep. And then, as we mentioned, Kyland, our new HOH for the week, meaning that the Queen's team of Tiffany and Claire are presumably safe.
So good for Sarah, obviously, from our last episode, Claire's friend.
Yep.
I really like watching her and Tiffany work together. I think Tiffany's great. I mean, that's been a big thing on Twitter, right? Like this week, and I'm worried like people are setting their expectations too high for Tiffany, but she does seem very good at the game. So, like, people would call it like comparing her to other BB greats. That like, let's chill. Let's give a few more weeks. But I will say she's quite good.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's just by far the best player on the house in my opinion right now. But it's a long season, a long game. It's week 2, so.
Right.
We'll set our expectations accordingly. But yeah, as we'll talk about, she basically found out about the Majority Alliance, helped to dismantle it, and is now in possibly one of the best positions in the game. So yeah, definitely one of the has the potential to be an all-time great if this continues in this trend.
Yes, yeah. If she plays at this level for the entirety of the game, she'll be up there for sure.
But yeah, so Kyland decides that he's going to run his HOH like a speed dating course or whatever. So he has meetings with each team back to back to back. I believe like 10-minute meetings with teams, and then he does rapid fire 5-minute meetings with each individual. Well, this is after though we get our wildcard competitions. Let's get that out of the way quickly, because it doesn't really matter. But it was a fun competition, a classic. So
shout out Sarah Beth, got a W. Didn't want to switch teams. I think that in her position it would make no sense for her to switch teams. So really the value that came out of this is blocking Frenchie and Brett from potentially winning safety to kind of leave Kyland's options completely open. Yeah,
definitely a clutch win. This is now the second risk reward situation in the season that has been offered and rejected.
This is bad. I mean, hey, we thought the first time, like, oh, it makes no sense for Frenchie to do it, but little did we know, it would have been much better for him had he just
Yeah.
taken the deal.
Yeah.
So maybe Sarah Beth will be kicking herself when she's not, on the Queens next week.
Yeah, when she could have, I guess, kicked probably Claire out. I don't know. Either one would probably have been a bad. Like as you said, she made the correct move from our perspective. But if Tiffany wins the next HOH and then Kyland wins the next HOH after, she would have been guaranteed safety. But neither of those people are coming after her regardless, so it doesn't matter. All she's doing by staying on the Kings is guaranteeing that the 3 teammates on her team are not going to be able to take a shot at her if they wanted to. Right. So, yeah, definitely correct. Not really any argument that can be made, in my opinion, for her to have made the other decision. Yeah. But yeah, we get that over with. We come back, and we have these rapid-fire speed dating situation. And a lot of things that have come up during this was about something that happened while the feeds were down before the competition that we saw a little bit of a glimpse of on the Sunday Night episode, where Frenchie has paranoia, presumably because he's been on a power trip for over a week, and this is the first time where he is potentially seeing his downfall in the coming up. Person, one of the people who he has nominated in the previous week, even though they're in an alliance together, is now the HOH and has a pretty reasonable reason to nominate Frenchie. So he kind of gets a little bit in his head here and thinks that everybody is planning on throwing him under the bus. And what we call this here is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably in trouble just based on how he played last week, but he didn't play this round any better.
Oh no!
Make himself not a target. It's just been a disaster through and through.
Yeah. So he thinks that Brent is throwing him under the bus when he really isn't. He extrapolates that to the entire slaughterhouse, basically making the decision to kind of sacrifice him. He, I believe, goes after Brent in the kitchen in front of Sarah Beth or Hannah, and then he walks into the back room and he points at Whitney and he says, "I'm out," in front of I think
that was Sarah Beth.
That might have been Sarah Beth. I think Hannah was in the kitchen, and I think there was another person. There might have been a third person who wasn't in the slaughterhouse who also heard this kind of meltdown happening. But yeah, definitely not great, I would say. One of the worst moves that he's made in a huge sea of hundreds of terrible moves he's made in the last week and a half.
Yeah, I don't know what really got into him there. Like, even if he felt like he was getting thrown under the bus, just like having a public meltdown is not great gameplay. Like, keep that private.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think Brittany was the other person, the third non-slaughterhouse member that he had this meltdown in front of. But yeah, obviously, Brent and Whitney, not too great about this. They go and talk to some other slaughterhouse members about what just happened, and then everybody appears to have brought this up in the speed dating sessions with Kyland, and so now Kyland is being told by literally everybody in the house, except for basically Brittany, that they need Frenchie to leave this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good spot to be in as HOH when everyone in the house is like, we would like you to get rid of this person, and then you're like, cool, done, easy.
Yeah, I mean, especially for Kyland's position, where he was technically in the butchers, technically in the slaughterhouse, but with the conversations that were happening last week, it was clear that he was at the bottom of that 8. He was not in a good position in that alliance, and they were planning on cutting him as soon as, a week or 2 from now, basically. And so he needed to take a shot at somebody like Frenchie or Brent this week, And the fact that Frenchie basically orchestrated an excuse for him to take a shot at Frenchie is just like, a gift landing in his lap.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, yeah, he was part of the slaughterhouse, but he got nominated, so, like, I'm sure in his head he was like, am I, though? Am I part of the slaughterhouse?
Yeah.
Like, so there's no blame to be had for him to renom Frenchie. Like, at this point in the game when there's just, like, not a lot of things that have happened, being put on the block is a pretty significant thing, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely odd, we talked about this last week, to basically target like 4 different people and then decide to invite them all into your alliance, with Brent, Christian, Alyssa, and Kyland all being at one point targets of Frenchie's. So he had basically 6 targets during the week, and 4 of the 6 he invited into his 8-person alliance. So I would not say that's a brilliant strategy in terms of like alliance manufacturing or building, but who's to say?
To each their own.
Yeah,
it could be a completely new meta strategy that we just never thought of.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Kylan gets handed this. Tiffany is the only one who has a conversation with him where she's not explicitly saying that Frenchie should be the target. She tries kind of last minute to get him to consider putting up a Brent and Whitney instead, because she's like, Frenchie's always going to make himself a target. Anybody can take him out in any future week. Whereas Brent is a little bit sharper, and he's much more willing to like jump around between power, which is very true. Yeah, but it's kind of damning with faint praise, but it's definitely true. Kyland, I think takes the slightly less optimal but ultimately much more safe route of nominating Frenchie alongside Brittany, who is basically the only person in the house he is not aligned with in some way.
Yeah, tough pull for Brittany. Most likely she's not seriously in trouble, but it can't feel good to be nominated.
Yeah.
So, I can understand why she was so upset at the end of the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then we come back from the nominations. Brittany is crying. Frenchie is upset. Big D is actually possibly the most upset. And he's talking about how it's not fair that they're, they shouldn't have nominated 2 people from the same team. That's not really like a fair way to play the game. It's not, not nice or whatever. I don't really.
That no one ever said Big Brother was fair.
Yeah. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Big Brother is pretty explicitly unfair.
Yeah. So. I mean, What are you going to do? Why piss off 2 teams when you can just piss 1 team off,
Yep. We'll see, as Frenchie continues his meltdown throughout the week, threatening to self-evict 10 or 7 times and somewhere in there. Getting the feed shut down over and over again as the producers have to talk him off the ledge. We'll see Big D right standing by him, going down with the ship. So that's a little bit of a precursor for the rest of the week there.
Yeah, not great for my winner pick. It's fine. Very disappointed, but this is what happens when you pick people on first impressions that you'd think would be cool to hang out with rather than how you think they're set up to do the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not over, right? And he did make moves in the later part of the week in the last couple of days. They put him in a slightly less bad position, but definitely not a great look when you're still pledging your fealty to somebody who is basically like a huge house target that everybody wants to leave, and who is basically laying down and letting it happen. Not great. You should never go down with the ship on Big Brother. Basically, as soon as obviously this is a little cold, but Big Brother's a cold game. In my opinion, as soon as your alliance member becomes a burden or becomes, unuseful to you, yeah, you should just toss that right away.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it does sound cold, but at the end of the day, you don't know these people. You don't owe these people anything. Like,
It literally
the
met 2 weeks ago.
yeah, the only thing you should be thinking about is how you get that now $750,000 check at the end. So if somebody's going down, you let them. Like if they're drowning, you fucking put the oar on their face and
Yeah.
hold them under.
Yeah. That's a little brutish, but correct. You could, as Claire said, you throw them under the box, under the thing.
You do.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah. So that's where we were at after the nominations. The Jokers not super happy as a team. But everybody else pretty content and happy that Kyland is taking the shot for the house. And so then we move to the next day where we have our veto competition, where we have Kyland, our two nominees Frenchie and Brittany, and then Claire, Alyssa, and Derek X randomly chosen for the veto competition. So this is Kyland, Alyssa, and Derek X's second veto competition in a row. And Derek X won the first veto, and also Derek X won the second veto.
Yeah, Ben, I don't know about this. I don't think I would have tried very hard if I were him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, has being an early veto champ helped people too much or hurt them more, would you say?
This is kind of, in my opinion, sort of like the first HOH thing, where if you play I think a lot of Big Brother comes down to if you play your situation well, you can basically do whatever you want. I think that winning these vetoes is probably fine for him. It was definitely fine from last week. Obviously, he was in trouble. He needed to win that veto.
Right. Yeah.
For this week, I think it's fine. He's basically has no social capital at the start of this week. So anything that can create value for other players to incentivize them to pick him up as an ally, I think at this point is pretty useful. So if he's demonstrating that he's a reliable competition winner, that's somebody that you want on your side, right? Somebody that you want winning comps to protect you or to save you. He's also proven that he's loyal to Kyland. He used the veto on Kyland. So if you establish yourself as a ally of his, and he's going to be winning a bunch of vetoes, that's great.
That's fair. I just remember Sam from BB21 won at least the first two, right?
Yep.
If not
He also won the first two. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely more of the mindset if you aren't in trouble explicitly, and obviously you'd have to be able to have a good read on the house. So that adds in a wrench too. But first week, yeah, okay, win the veto. I think that was the right move. This week, I think you could have sandbagged it a little, but hey, like you said, it all comes down to what you do with it.
I mean, if you're looking at, Sam from BB21 as an example, I mean, before he won those vetoes, he was essentially in a completely worthless spot in the house. And after he won those vetoes, he was added as a 9 to Grateful, which is technically
undeniable.
Yeah, undeniable. Technically an increase in position, even though he didn't end up, playing the situation well from there. I wouldn't say that he, was targeted or lost because of those vetoes, and more so that he didn't leverage those veto wins into actually advancing his social positioning and building a base around him. He just kind of let himself be the 9th in an 8-person alliance. And he was eliminated around when you would expect the 9th in an 8-person alliance to be eliminated. Yeah, I mean, I think what we'll see, we'll talk about what Derek X's positioning is. He's, cozied up to Tiffany here, who is the power broker in the house. He's essentially become an alternate third to Tiffany and Claire. He's kind of found his way into this 5-person group of Tiffany and Claire, Kyland, SB, and him. They've kind of expanded their 5 to potentially include the rest of the Kings team, which would be Xavier, Christian, and Alyssa, or alternatively to include Azza and Hannah and who is the alternate third? I think maybe also X. But yeah, and he's also has this like flirt mance going with Hannah, where that's potentially an ally that only he has, or Hannah's also like loosely loyal to the Cookout as well. But as far as like a number one ally, similar to like Kyland has with Sarah Beth, his game position has drastically improved from even just a few days ago, never mind a week ago. And I think that winning those vetoes definitely is a huge part in demonstrating that value.
Oh man, well, good for him, because he looked like literally the bottom of the totem pole last week. So
right, no, I mean, this is the thing, right? If you're in a position where you have nothing to lose, right, anything that changes the way that people view you is going to be positive, right? Like, because I mean, you could say, obviously, like Frenchie has nothing to lose, but people are viewing him worse and worse every hour. But like, he's not like he's going from 99.9% getting evicted to 99.99% getting evicted. It doesn't matter, right? Any amount of chaos or changing in the structure is going to benefit you if you're at the bottom.
For sure.
All right, so after that, we have the very little happened between the veto comp and ceremony. A lot of these preliminary talks of the alliances I just rattled off are starting to happen. There's discussion of whether or not people like Derek X or Tiffany can trust Christian and Alyssa to actually target Brent and Whitney if one of them were to win power next week, and exactly how much information to share with them. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I don't see either of those two as like particularly loyal to Brent and Whitney. I feel like they would probably just go with it. Like, okay, you want them up? That's good for me. I don't care about them. I, would rather just look good to the house. So. But I do kind of understand, like, they're probably going to make that move regardless, so there's no need to, like, give them every piece of information.
Right. Yeah. I agree for the most part. There is still, like, residual tension between Christian and Alyssa and Derek X from Frenchie's HOH week, where Frenchie, made up a bunch of bullshit about Derek X to basically blame him for him targeting Christian and Alyssa. So that's kind of been squashed, but there's still like the whole thing of like, each person is like, oh, is it really squashed, or does the other person still harbor some resentment? And you kind of like have to defensively hold resentment, right?
Right, yeah. You can't let your guard down.
Exactly, yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, it's very hard to like squash beef in the Big Brother house just because you have to trust that the other person actually accepts that the beef is squashed.
Yeah, which again, you don't know these people, so you don't know if they really do. Like, really, outside of like showing through like powers that you're not targeting someone, you win an HOH, you don't nominate them, then you can probably start building trust. Outside of that, like, it's hard to say whether or not someone has squashed their beef with you.
Yeah, and this is especially relevant as well for Derek X going into next week, because he is trying to do the calculus in his head of who he feels comfortable throwing the HOH to, because he, in particular, if Brent and Whitney are the targets, can't win HOH, because if he wins HOH, Brent and Whitney are safe because they're on his team. So he's basically saying, okay, I'm fine with throwing the HOH to Tiffany or Claire, probably to Sarah Beth. I need to figure out if I feel comfortable throwing the HOH to somebody like Christian or Alyssa. So,
what do you think he falls right now on that?
I think that he would probably very tentatively end up throwing it to Christian or Alyssa. However, at this point, I believe that Christian and Alyssa are also planning on throwing the HOH because they don't want to be the ones taking the shot at Brent and Whitney. So
Right.
at this point, there's like maybe 4 or 5 people actually trying for the HOH. So it's actually pretty high likelihood, in my opinion, that we see a Claire or Tiffany HOH next week, unless it's some kind of crapshoot.
Yeah. Like this week.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like where we're at right now, where that kind of 5-some is like loosely creating a web around them. This past 24 hours, Tiffany has put in a lot of work with Christian to try to form a 4-person thing with her and Claire and Christian and Melissa, with a potential 5 of. They mentioned several different 5s. They mentioned, I think, Hannah. They mentioned, I think, Derek X. I think they mentioned Sarah Beth as well. They might have mentioned Azza as well. I think they threw out a lot of different options. I think Sarah Beth is probably the one that stuck the most, but it's mostly going to be this kind of 4, where Christian and Melissa are seeing the writing on the wall that the slaughterhouse is dead and finding new options.
Yeah. I think that's great, obviously, for Tiffany and Claire. Like, they seem to be really just, like, at the, like, center of a lot of these rotating alliances, to the point where, like, no matter what happens with the HOH, they're not going to be on the target. And they have the built-in ready, like, Brent and Whitney, like, nominate them, and everyone is still like, oh yeah, they did what they said they were going to do. They still have my back. So they're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they're kind of in the spot now that Kyland could have been in, or tried to put himself in coming into this week, where Kyland is definitely in a better spot now than he was at the end of Frenchie's HOH, but Tiffany in particular has definitely used this week and her safety in this week especially as a way of really building like this, like basically taking the entire house, shaking it up, and rearranging the pieces to put her at the center. And it's been like very, very entertaining and interesting to watch. Just like
man, we talked about it at the beginning. She's been impressive this week. So
it's very rare in modern Big Brother that you see. I mean, first of all, that you see a big alliance form and then fall apart within like a few days, basically.
Yeah.
But also somebody on the outside realize they're on the outside, realize who the power structure is, and figure out how exactly to dismantle that and build a new power structure that favors them. That's a very, very rare thing that we see like in recent Big Brother. So yeah, very fun. I mean, the season's gone like basically like you couldn't script it better so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, but like kudos to casting for just putting like people who are gamers and a little bit of messes. Frenchie certainly is a mess, but it needed one for the season to be entertaining. So this knock on wood, this could be really great.
Definitely. There's so much that can be done with this the structure. The way that the house is kind of designed right now, from like a social structure perspective, is a lot of like pairs and a lot of like these kind of loyalty block things, where you have there's a lot of pairs, right? So you have like Tiffany and Claire, Brent and Whitney are sort of a pair. They're being viewed as a pair at the very least. Alyssa and Christian are a pair. Kyland and Sarah Beth are a pair. Derek X might be able to form a pair with Hannah, but he also has ties to people like Tiffany, people like Kyland. Tiffany has, relationships with a lot of people. She has a good relationship with Azza, even though it's kind of like been a little bit rocky in the last 24 hours or so. Big D had previously had a pair with Frenchie, and now he's trying to pivot a little bit, but he's pivoting to Tiffany. So another piece for Tiffany to pick up there. Just like very, very interesting. It's a very non-standard Big Brother social structure.
Yeah. Like you said, only like 4 or 5 people are going to go for the HOH next week, so it's going to be interesting, especially if like Brent or Whitney win HOH to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I said the slaughterhouse is dead. I think the one thing that could bring the slaughterhouse back to life is a Brent or Whitney HOH. Where maybe the that group just like kind of recoalesces around them just because they have to run to power. And that's when you might see somebody or Brent take a shot at, you know, Claire or an Azza or, you know, a Brittany maybe. Yeah. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
It's definitely
exactly.
Well, I mean, it was an uncommon outcome for last week, and Brent almost won that HOH. He came in second basically to Kyland. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Brent could win this third HOH. But it's definitely a weird feeling that I feel like I'm rooting for the most likely outcome. Right? That's usually the opposite of what happens on Big Brother. Well, usually you're rooting for like a shakeup or like rooting for like the person the outs to win. But right now I like the social structure that's kind of happened now, and if the person the outs wins, the social structure could actually collapse into something boring, which is very odd. It's very odd.
It's a funny way to look at it, but you're totally right. Like the worst case scenario would just be the slaughterhouse coming back together.
Yeah.
So
that's where we're at. We didn't obviously mention it, but Derek X doesn't end up using the power of veto as expected. Frenchie remains the target. He's basically been, praying to the cameras for some kind of America's vote twist, assuming that he's a fan favorite, which is certainly not true.
His reads are on point as ever.
Yeah. He's got a great understanding of what the fans think and what they want. That's why he's doing everything that fans have universally decried as being annoying and irritating, and he's like very openly pandering as he's done the entire season so far. But yeah, it's cringy, but it'll be over soon.
I do enjoy that, like, the Ghost of the Wand secret power lives on.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
He thought that the vetoes would have secret powers. He thinks that America is going to have a secret power to save him. He sees himself as like, production's favorite. So like, they're not going to let him just go out. There's at least going to be a battle back, right? Which, as we know, there is not. He's also talked about
probably killed the battle back at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
so
one of the only good things that the COVID has brought us. But yeah, and he's intermittently talked about wanting to be saved by a battle back and saying, I don't want to sit in a hotel room for another 3 weeks away from my kids, and if there is a battle back, I might just quit and leave. It's very on and off with him. But we know there's not a battle back. Travis is back home. He's in the real world again. So Frenchie will be back on Twitter in just a few days to see that he is widely disliked by the audience.
He's going to be back on Twitter, and then within probably 10 minutes be back off of Twitter, if he values his mental health at all.
We'll see.
I hope he doesn't.
Yeah, he should stay off Twitter.
He should stay off Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly,
everybody
who goes on Big Brother should stay off Twitter for at least like 6 months after they played the game.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, and again, for future people going into the house, never assume that you're the fan favorite, because, pretty much to a T, the people who assume they're the fan favorite are almost always not. And in fact, Tiffany, who is one of the most universally beloved players in recent seasons, said last night in the feeds that she doesn't think that people will like her because she is, kind of like brash, and she feels like she says controversial things. And so even, that's the right way to approach, the situation, right? Because if you act like you don't think you're the fan favorite, even if in the back of your mind you think you might be, you come off as humble, and you can never look like a conceited asshole, right?
Right. Oh, man. So, I guess...
And don't threaten to quit every fucking 6 hours. It's so fucking annoying, and they always shut the feeds off.
Yeah, and if you do technically at least try to clear the wall like Run Our Test or Meta World Peace did,
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, but everything else,
Yeah.
sort of an escape attempt is just annoying.
Yeah. If you say you want to quit, right? If you feel you want to quit, just follow through, pussy. Like, just do it. Like, don't talk about it all week. Either don't talk about it or do it. And get out of my face.
I agree, and like I don't necessarily understand what it accomplishes because it's like if you're in the Big Brother house, and someone's like, "I'm thinking about quitting,"
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Okay, do that, or
Yeah.
we'll just vote you off." Like, doesn't matter to me
Right.
at all. So like, why are you telling me this?
Right. It literally changes nothing. He's gonna get voted out on Thursday either way. Nobody's gonna change their mind. Nobody's like going to become empathetic other than Big D and like want to flip the vote. All it does is annoy your housemates and annoy the audience.
Yep.
So
I mean, a lot of people really want to get on the show, so if you get on the show and you're ungrateful about it, it doesn't look good.
yeah, I mean even beyond that, it's just like it's not fun feeds to watch somebody whining all week and threatening to quit and not doing it. And again, production has to cut the feeds. They have to bring him into the diary room. They have to talk him off the ledge, and then he comes out. And then 2 hours later, rinse and repeat. It's just it's a distraction. It gets in the way of the enjoyment of the audience, and it's just it's just not good. It's not a good look.
It's a mess.
It's a mess. It's a Frenchie. The memoir of Frenchie's Big Brother game. The subtitle: A Mess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any any other big thing? Like it's been fun and entertaining to see like the downfall, but in terms of like a week has been pretty straightforward. Like we kind of knew that this was happening for a few days, so yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been time for players to kind of recharge and play some more like social, like subtle kind of game moves and try to set up for next week. I'm curious, do you think that Frenchie leaving is a positive or negative for the show?
I think that it's probably a positive just because, well, he's very ineffective in things that he wants to do, such as building, a bomb squad. But like having a player who is at least aware enough to be like, this is the optimal gameplay in terms of navigating the game if you can pull it off. I want that out of there because I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want big alliances, and seeing as and it's not like I'm saying building a big alliance is wrong. Like, you get on Big Brother and you can make, an alliance and get to the end. Okay, do it. But like, it's terms of someone who's covering it and wants to watch an entertaining show. I don't want anyone thinking like that.
Yeah. No, I would generally agree. I know there's people online. There's I think a minority of people online who are the Devon comparison is so obvious that even people in the house are making it. That Big Brother 16 from an entertainment perspective was pretty good for the first 2 weeks, and then after Devon's eviction, the house kind of stabilized, and the bomb squad became the detonators, and basically just kind of ran the way down to the end. I don't think that's personally going to happen here. As I said, I think the slaughterhouse is dead, save for Brent or possible Whitney HOH. And I think the house structure is way more complicated than it was after the Devon eviction. And I think there is a lot of good players in the season that could be interesting. And so I don't think that's really an issue.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like necessarily Tiffany is say Tiffany's the Derek of the season. It doesn't seem like she has the same play style of build out the giant alliance. So I don't think it's just gonna automatically revert to it's the same situation as BB16.
Yeah. It's actually interesting. I think that I would not compare Tiffany to Derek at all. Because I think that Tiffany's gameplay is built around a lot of individual one-on-one relationships. She has situations where she sits down and does people's hair, and she uses that as a precursor to be able to talk game with them and build social relationships with them. And if we're talking about like Tiffany and Claire as a pair, and we're like saying, oh well, if it becomes BB16, that would be Derek and Cody. I think that's silly because in BB16, Cody was the one who was the most in control of social relationships and one-on-one relationships. And I think that right now, Tiffany is way better strategically situated than Claire and way better socially situated than Claire. So I don't really think it's a reasonable comparison.
Right. I agree. So yeah, Frenchie, thanks for making the beginning fun.
Yeah. He set the tone for the season, so hopefully the tone continues with a little bit less self-eviction threats.
Please.
Yeah.
Please stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, just so far 2 weeks in, I want to say I've enjoyed the I want to call it the safety suite. That's not what it's called this season.
Oh, the wild card.
The
yeah.
wild card competition.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. Obviously, it didn't really do much this week, but I think it's at least interesting. It's better than just like straight immunity like they did on BB19. It's more interesting because of the team factor than the safety suite was last season. So I think it's a good twist that's not overpowered, and that's what we like to see.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Matt, you mentioned the teams. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how the team's going so far. Do you think the season right now is working partially because of the team twist, or in spite of the team twist?
I don't think players are necessarily looking at the teams that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a lot of cross-team alliances, a lot of like understanding that this is not forever, so I'm not going to get terribly invested in it.
Yep.
And it's led to interesting situations like with Derek X being like, oh, I can't win the HOH because that goes against what like my potential allies want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that at least adds some intrigue to it. He doesn't seem like Polly won HOH 1 week when they were trying to get Frank out and Frank was on his team. Like, I don't think Derek would do that. So I don't hate it. I think it's been a very neutral thing, and if anything, maybe it has made people work together who may not have been, but I don't think it's like been too impactful so far. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I came in definitely down on the idea of there being a team twist. I think in the past it hasn't really like worked to the extent that the expectation is there. But so far, I agree. I think it's like neutral to positive so far. Maybe that's just because the season as a whole is good, and because the season as a whole is good, you just kind of attribute all of the good things that the twist has accomplished to the domino effect of it making the season better. But I think the pairs dynamic we have right now has a lot to do with the way the team twist is structured, where a lot of the pairs are on the same team, where you have like kind of Ozzy and Brittany as a loose pair. Brittany's also very loyal to Frenchie. Frenchie and Big D are a pair. Brent and Whitney are a pair on a team. You have the Hannah and Derek X flirtmance. Christian and Alyssa are on a team together. Tiffany and Claire are on a team together. Like, basically the only like real strong cross-team pair that we have is like Kyland and SB. And all the other pairs are at least like partially to do with the team twist. So
that's a good point.
I think it's I think that it's been fine. But I think that if we had the Slaughterhouse and we had a Brent HOH this week, and we saw like Claire or somebody going out this week, and the Slaughterhouse just stuck together, we'd be like, oh man, this team twist is really stifling gameplay. So
yeah, no, that's a good point too. I mean, we were so fucking close to that being the real. I was sweating watching that HOH comp.
I was not able to even sit down. I was on my feet watching that. I was like, oh god, please for the love of God, anybody,
last season all over again.
Literally anybody, please just win.
Flashbacks to Janelle just like missing and losing to Tyler.
And the shuffleboard thing, and then like Kaser with the ball and Enzo. Yep. Yeah.
And Devon. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but it worked out. We got a positive outcome for the first time in like 3.5 years. So
that's insane. It's like it's been so long where it's like yes, I'm glad this is who won the HOH.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we got to watch BB Can and that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Plenty of clips and stuff.
Yeah, BB Can is great.
As US.
Yeah.
So, oh man, at least we had the palate cleanser of BB Can 9.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I am nervous for Frenchie to come back to Twitter. I don't know how he's going to handle this. There's always that possibility that people aren't as mean once a player comes onto Twitter. You know, I've seen that in the past where people talk mad shit and then they're like, I just want to interact with this person.
Yeah.
So that I'm kind of hopeful that is the outcome. Like, if I could just say anything, like, yeah, Frenchie sucks at Big Brother, but you don't have to be mean to him on Twitter about it. He's gonna know. Like, he probably knows now that he blew it. So that's all I really have to say.
Yeah.
In terms of that.
No, for sure. I think that taking shots at his gameplay or like things he's done in the house is one thing, but the game's over for him in 2 days. Let him go back to his family.
Right.
If you don't want to see him do like say delusional things, just mute his Twitter or block him or whatever.
Right.
There's no reason to engage if you have nothing nice to say.
Exactly. I mean, there's plenty of negativity on Twitter already.
Oh,
you don't need to add to it.
It's basically the only thing Twitter is used for. So.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's why I love
Anything you want to touch on before we get on out of here?
No, I'm very excited. I hope the energy of the season continues and we get a good HOH outcome next week. And yeah, I mean, we'll get maybe a short-term, boring week of Brent going out. But then after that, the game is basically wide open.
Yeah, that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
That we get to suffer. We're just gonna clear some pieces to open the game up.
Yep.
And we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. You can follow the main channel on Twitter at WG Everything, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitch at Wicked Good Everything. YouTube also the main channel at Wicked Good Everything. The channel is Better Radio. This is the Have Not Room. You can find us here on its YouTube channel or on any of the podcast streaming services you would listen to. Brian, you want to shout out your Twitter and whatever?
Yeah, so my Twitter is at @theFakeBMar. That's BMARR. This channel, we're 18 subscribers away from 100. When we get to 100, we get to name the channel youtube.com/Better Radio. So tell your friends if they're fans of Big Brother to subscribe. We really appreciate it. And yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ben Sharon as well. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys next week with hopefully another fun week of Big Brother 23.